Hi, this is Frank Taylor with Nature at Your Door. Today I'm at Cherry Grove Beach in South Carolina, part of North Myrtle Beach, and I just walked to the ocean front across the sand dunes over a boardwalk, and I looked down and I saw a spectacular flower. It's called Indian blanket, it's called blanket flower, and it's also called firewheel. I'll tell you how it's got its name and tell you more about this incredible native plant to the U.S. that's growing here in the sand dunes in South Carolina. So stay tuned. Right here in your backyard. You never know what you're going to find. So I was walking up here to the beach, checking out the waves and the sand dune plants, and I looked over here and I saw these spectacular flowers growing here in the sand dune. And sand dunes, of course, are so important to establishing these beach fronts and preventing erosion, and it's so great to see these native plants growing like this. Now, this plant called Indian blanket or blanket flower or firewheel, it's a little bit debated if this particular species of it is actually native to South Carolina or not, or if it's a what we call a naturalized plant. There are some places that call it a native and some say that it's naturalized, but it is an incredibly beautiful plant. It gets its name because of its predominance in the desert Southwest, and the indigenous peoples of the Southwest included a lot of these colors that you see in this particular flower in their blankets. I've also heard that in parts of Texas there are huge areas where these flowers dominate fields, and from a distance it looks like that of a woven blanket. I think talking about the name firewheel speaks for itself. It's a very interesting plant. It has a spiny, hairy stem. It's one of the features that help identify this particular species. So here we'll take a closer look at the leaves. Now you can see the distinctive shape of the leaves here, and note also the very hairy stems. And here it helps with the dunes. It's not a predominant dune erosion plant, but it's part of these dune communities. And walking around down here, I see so many yards where people are trying to plant a traditional lawn with traditional, let's say, northeastern plant assemblages that simply don't belong here. This is a plant that grows very well in sandy soils, and I wish people would use the local indigenous plants and plant them in their yards on these beachfront houses instead of doing this fight with pesticides and water and watering, instead of planting some of the really beautiful and native plants here. It's always fascinating to study the relationship between native plants and the insects that evolve with them. And this plant out in the Southwest, and I haven't observed it here, but there's a moth called the blanket moth, and it has colors that replicate the colors in the flower, from the yellow to the reds and pinks and to the orange. And when a predator comes, this moth can land right on this flower and simply disappear, completely camouflaged on it. Its larvae will feed on the leaves of this plant. Now, it's a pretty fascinating evolution of insects and flowers that have evolved together. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Nature at Your Door. These dunes are really, really fascinating to me, and I just wanted to do this quick share for you. I hope you'll check out my Seashore Life playlist, and remember, if you like what I do on this channel, please give me a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I love hearing from my viewers. So And don't forget to check out my Seashore Life playlists that learn all about plants you find in the maritime forest and all kinds of wildlife that you'll find in that forest and on the beach and in the marshes here, including birds and crabs and jellyfish, sponges, and so much more. And remember, I cover all things nature, from frogs, toads, snakes, turtles, the myriapoda, insects, trees, wildflowers, and fungi. I cover all the things you might encounter just outside your door. But thanks again for watching this episode of Nature at Your Door.